he's going to need a little extra time. And, so, that being said, I'm going to jump right in. So I'm going to start by reading a poem. It's, I kind of took one that I found and kind of twisted it a little because I didn't like everything that was in it. So, it is not what the world gives me in honor, praise, or gold. It is what I give the world, so others do unfold. If by my example through life I can help another soul, then I have done what cannot be, made good by praise or gold. One tiny thought or tiny word may give a ministry birth, and if that ministry was created by me, may it be for God's eternal work. Amen. So, kind of what I'm talking about is ministry. I've talked to some people over the course of the last, well, several years actually, but I'm thinking in the last year specifically, about ministry. And there seems to be this thought that ministry is either preaching or mission trips or something like that. But I'm going to ask a couple questions and then I'm going to try to get the answers to the questions. First question is, what is ministry? What is ministry defined? The second question is, does everybody have a ministry? The third question is ministry specifically preaching or going on mission trips or soul winning? And the fourth question is your ministry helping others or merely fulfilling your lustful void in your personal life? So, those are questions I had to study because you can't take somebody else's word for it because that's going to be their opinion or their conviction or their belief. And what they have to say about it might not be what God has to say about it. So, this is just my conviction, my belief, and my studies. I encourage you to study this out on your own, and I'm not going into the depth that I can go into for time's sake. And then another thought is, maybe some of you don't think these questions apply to you in your life, but I'm going to try to show you different. I think every single one of those questions apply to everyone here. The ministry that I'm talking about today, just so you're aware, is I'm going to touch on the conversational ministry. The ministry you have on a day-to-day basis when you just have a simple conversation with somebody. But I'm going to start by defining ministry according to a dictionary, which Webster's 1828 defines ministry as, it is the act of serving, sharing, and teaching under a superior authority. And people that are thinking that preachers and preaching is the sole ministry or mission trips or soul winning, that is not your sole ministry. That is not the sole ministry. But they are not wrong. Because a preacher, when he is preaching, he is serving the listeners. He's giving and sharing with them biblical truth on which they can learn from. And his superior authority is Christ. So they are not wrong in that aspect. But that being said, let's look at 1 Timothy 3:5. 1 Timothy 3:5. First Timothy 3:5. First Timothy 3:5 says, "For if a man know not how to rule his own house, how shall he take care of the church of God?" So, I'm also just touching on this verse simply because this is implying that there's a home ministry. You have your family as your first priority. And I need to say that because a lot of people, way too many people, don't understand that before the church of God. I know too many people I can talk to, they can tell me stories of people they know. They're spending so much of their time and effort trying to help the church and help people in the church that they neglect their family, and their family is crumbling because of it. And I just had to touch on that. But I have had people ask me personally if I had a heart for the ministry. And that was kind of a little bit interesting. I said, yes, but let me define ministry in the kind of ministry I'm talking about. So, let's look at Ephesians 4:29. See, ministry has a lot more than just what meets the eye or the ear, however you want to say it. There's a lot more to it and a lot more depth than I have time to go into. I'm just simply trying to touch on a couple different aspects of it, kind of give an overall view of it, and then I'm going to try to bring it all together at the end. But Ephesians 4:29, says, "Let no communication proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good to the use of edifying, that it may minister grace unto the hearers." So there it implies that your communication is your ministry.
Read that again.
Let no communication proceed out of your mouth.
Hold on. Read it again.
Let no corrupt communication. Sorry. Let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good to the use of edifying, that it may minister grace unto the hearers. So, like I started to say, it is the communication that's coming out of your mouth. Okay? It says, but that which is good to the use of edifying, that it may minister grace. I find it very interesting that he specifies that it may minister grace. So that's another study you can do. How many things can you minister? I don't have time to go into that. That's something to think about and study on your own. And here we have the conversation, communication, ministering to others. Now let's look at 2 Corinthians 11, 13 through 15. 2 Corinthians 11, 13 through 15. And verse 23 as well. 2 Corinthians 11, 13 through 15, and verse 23. It says, for such are false apostles, deceitful workers, transforming themselves into the apostles of Christ. And no marvel, for Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light. Therefore, it is no great thing if his ministers also be transformed as the ministers of righteousness, whose end shall be according to their works. And jump down to verse 23. Are they ministers of Christ? I speak as a fool. I am more, and labor is more abundant, and stripes above measure, and prisons more frequent, and deaths oft. Now, there is something very interesting in this group of verses I just read that I found when I was reading it. And that is that it specifies in verse 23, are they ministers of Christ? So then I had to ask myself, who else would they be a minister for? Then you go back up to verse 13 and 14, and it says in verse 14, no more, for Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light. Therefore it is no great thing if his ministers also be transformed as the ministers of righteousness. You see that deceitfulness in there? When I read that, and this is how I'm interpreting this in my personal convictions of how I read this, is there are ministers of Satan.
Yeah.
And you might not agree with that, but that's what I believe.
Yeah. Amen.
So, if Satan's got ministers, and they can also be transformed into the ministers of righteousness, I'd say, yeah, you got to be pretty careful about how you say, or what you say your ministry is, and how you portray your ministry. And I think you've got to be pretty careful about talking to people that ask you if you have a heart for the ministry, because you have to specify to these people that there is more than just one kind of ministry. And I'm sure whenever I was asked that question, they were asking if I had a heart for preaching or mission trips or soul winning or something like that. But I also wanted them to kind of understand why I didn't just say yes, you know. And like I said, you can look into this in way more detail. But let's go over to Romans 13, 3 and 4. Romans 13, 3 and 4. And like I said, I'm kind of going a lot faster than I meant to now. So if you have any questions afterwards, I'll be happy to talk about it. I'm just trying to save time because I know eventually you guys are going to get hungry. So. Romans 13, 3 through 4. For rulers are not a terror to good works, but to the evil. Wilt thou then not be afraid of the power? Do that which is good, and thou shalt have praise of the same. For he is the minister of God to thee for good. But if thou do that which is evil, be afraid, for he beareth not the sword in vain. For he is the minister of God, a revenger, to execute wrath upon him that doeth evil. Now, there again, it was the minister of God. And I just wanted to keep touching on this because I really want you guys to grasp, if nothing else out of this message, that there are more ministers than just ministers of Christ. And the reason reason that's so important is because I've seen a lot of people go down the wrong paths in lives, whereas they were raised in a quote-unquote church setting. And I don't really like that phrase, but I don't know what else to use. And I was personally hurt watching these people go down these paths, and I keep talking about that same point over and over because it's really important, and I don't really know how to express that to you guys, but I just want you to really know that means something to me, and I hope it means something to you. And I definitely encourage you to study that. But like I said, I'm talking about the conversation communication ministry. And I'm going to use an example here. I'm going to start talking over here while I'm putting the guitar together. Okay? This is an electric guitar. I got it all apart. Okay? And I'm going to try to make some sense out of this while I'm putting it together. This is going to be a physical illustration of how your conversation and everything in your body all put together plays a part. So everything here is going to resemble a part of your body. So the body of the guitar is going to resemble your physical body. Okay, the cavity here, that's going to resemble your heart. That's inside. Okay, and the neck and the head is going to resemble your spiritual superior head. Now, before you can do much with the guitar, the neck has to be, the head has to be fitly joined together. And once it's fitly joined together, nothing can separate it except you. And I'm kind of gonna, I might stop talking. Last time I tried this, I said I should have brought an electric drill. I almost did this time, then I realized if I had an electric drill, you couldn't hear me. So I didn't bring an electric drill. And also, I am not fully reassembling every screw and every detail right now. I'm not going to solder all the wires and everything like that. I'm just putting it together for the example. So, once you have your superior head, and you fitly are joined together and compacted by that which every joint supplieth, that is a bond that only you can break. Nobody else can break that bond. Because that ultimately, that's your decision to accept that head, which should be Christ, by the way. Now the frets, up and down the neck, that's other people you come in contact with. The pickups, these three right here, are your superior authority that you let into your heart. Once you have a superior authority in your heart, which by the way should be Christ and His Word, things start making a lot more sense, because you cannot take all these parts of this guitar, throw them on the table like I had, and say, that guitar makes beautiful music. It will not happen. And your conversation can go a lot of ways. If you're frustrated, you're angry, it can get really ugly really fast. I know, because I've been there, done that. And the last thing you want, though, is to be trying to talk to somebody, trying to get a point across, especially if you're trying to get somebody saved. I'll use that example. You're trying to get somebody saved, you're talking to them. And if they say something that frustrates you, and you get all angry with them, they are not going to leave. They're not going to keep listening to you in any way, shape, or form. As soon as you get angry with them, you just cut off that connection with them. And once you put that superior authority in your heart, things start making a lot more sense. Your strings, by the way, and like I said, I'm not fully reassembling it, but the saddle, when you put it in here, your strings come up through the back. They start in your heart, and they continue to the head. The strings stand for your words. Your words are between your superior head and your heart. When you put the strings on, and they come in contact, your words come in contact with other people, the results are up to you. Where are you pushing the strings? Who are you coming in contact with? See my point? You have to take all that into consideration because it's just like music. If you put the strings on, you can play beautiful music. You can play any kind of music you want. You can play relaxing music, calming music, or you can play rock music. But let me ask you, which one's going to do you more good in your spiritual life? Rock? Or just classical? Or songs like In the Garden? Which one is going to calm you most inside? Which one is going to have the most effect on your spiritual life for the better? The output, the jack, stands for your mouth. That's where the words come out and amplify to the people around you. And you have to be careful with every part that's put together, how they all play their own parts in your conversation, because ultimately, every part of your body goes into your ministry, no matter what your ministry is. Your spirit, soul, and body, every single part of you plays a part. It can be all working together, or it can be sitting on a table, or in spiritual form, apart from each other, separated, and not working together. But what good is it doing you, sitting on a table, spread out? If you put it together, and everything works together, and you let your spiritual head into your heart, everything works better. The saddle and the bridge on electric are the same thing. That's bridging the gaps from your heart to the people you come in contact with. Every part of you has a use. One thing to consider though, your heart, your words, the people you come in contact with, they are not your volume and tone of voice. That is a whole other thing. On a guitar, you got a volume and two tone knobs. One is for bright and dull on, well, there's a five-way switch here. You got one, which is the single pickup, two, which is the two pickups, three, which is a single in the middle, four, which is these two, and then five, which is this one. But your tone knobs, this one works for these two, this one works for these two, depending on where this knob is. But it is simply this. Your words have effect with the people that hear them. Your conversation that you have with somebody, you can ultimately choose how you want that conversation to go. It's just like music. You can pick up a guitar, play any kind of music you want. Well, what's going to do you the most good spiritually? Now, there's been times where I wasn't doing so good spiritually, and I picked up a guitar to try to comfort myself emotionally or whatnot. And I'll tell you what, that's not the time you want to be in contact with people. That's the time you want to have your head into God's Word. Because people, 99% of the time, will tell you what they think you want to hear to comfort you. But I'll tell you what, every time I've gotten my head into God's Word and I started reading that, that comforted me, truly. And when it's all put together and all said and done, you can have a productive conversation. That's about what I've got right now. Hope it didn't take too long. Hope Seth has plenty of time. And,
Thank you, Darren.
that's it.
Amen. Good job.